that's a level of complexity beyond me. So
Yes.
Well, thank you for calling in, Margarita.
Thank you for addressing it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, that one on Bryant and Harrison. I used to live down there on Dorr and Ninth by the stud, and I used to take that bus into the Mission, but I think that they're probably wanting to reroute that bus because it's not a very, populated bus. That could be part of it,
well, actually, there's a number of routes that Muni is looking at, and with each route that they're looking at, they're suggesting a number of possible alternatives, and there are all kinds of comments from people who live along the current routes who say, no, don't take our bus line away, to other people who live near the proposed routes who say, yes, bring it to us, so there's all these, there can only be so many bus routes, and there's like a high level of needs, so there's a lot of different opinions on where the routes should be placed.
and how often they should run.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was telling me that she waited an hour and a half yesterday for the 29, which was down by Big Lots near the Mission. She waited an hour and a half.
Well,
for the bus.
Something. And that's been a concern for years. People used to say, I first arrived here in 1989, and back then we used to say, 3 buses in a row, and then you wait.
Yeah.
And if you miss those 3 buses in a row, then you got to wait for a long time.
Yeah.
But something that Muni has done recently is they have conducted studies of the frequency and the timing of their bus runs, and so they're using that data into adjusting the bus routes.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is good news. But something else that I want to talk about was I want to talk about the fact that in the city of San Francisco, there are a number of organizations that are interested in making San Francisco safer for pedestrians and safer for people who do not use automobile for transit. And I just wanted to mention a few of them. One of them is there's an organization called livablecity.org. They have a website where they address a lot of transit safety issues. There's also SPUR, which is San Francisco, San Francisco Planning and Urban Research Group. And here's their magazine. They have a website, spur.org.
It's called The Urbanist?
Yes. And so there's also Walk SF, which is a San Francisco pedestrian advocacy group. So you have Walk SF, you also have Walk NY, Walk LA, Walk DC.
Walk Paris?
Yeah. Well,
is there a Walk Paris yet?
I don't know. We'll have to take a look to see. But there's basically Walk and then the city name, and there's websites that. So it's really interesting how there are so many cities where the pedestrian advocacy group has really become organized. Then there's also the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition, which advocates for increased bicycle access, like bike routes.
You have a book there?
Striping, yeah. And I have a book. I brought a book with me. This is kind of like a show and tell. There's a book here. It's called Critical Mass, Bicycling's Defiant Celebration. Critical Mass is a San Francisco institution. It's a end-of-the-month bicycle party, which takes place at Justin Herman Plaza at 6 p.m. on the last Friday of the month, and it takes off riding wherever.
Yeah.
And this movement of critical mass was born in San Francisco, and it spread all throughout the world. It exists in Australia, in Europe, and in Africa, Asia, and every continent. And so,
cool.
This is also an interesting movement as well. And so that's all I really had to say about, in terms of talking about public transit and, pedestrian safety. I wanted to know if I could read a poem at some point that I've written.
What do you think? This is Planet Glee. Everybody is an artist. Don't forget, everyone is an artist. I just went like that. I'm sorry. Don't forget, everyone is an artist.
Okay.
Okay, and we're going to listen to John's poem.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. This is a poem I wrote several years back. It's called Subway Culture, Humanity Revealed. This is a poem about subway experiences in 4 different cities. New York. While riding, a passenger is approached by another. A book reveals a shared interest. No longer strangers, but lifelong friends. Paris. Solitude among the introverted masses is shattered. A stranger from Chicago breaks a sacred rule. She speaks to us with a loud and friendly mouth. Scolding looks are shot at her. But these shots fail to assassinate her celebration of life. San Francisco. In the evening, outbound Muni undergoes a beautiful metamorphosis. Muni becomes a library on rail. The subway ticket becomes a library card. Passengers, hungry for knowledge, become immersed in books. Mexico City. Above, successful Chilangos transport themselves in cars. Below, 6 million metro riders transport themselves responsibly.
Yay! I don't know about you, but that poem reminded me of the film Paris, Je t'aime. Did you see that?
Oh, Paris, I Love You.
Yes. And how...
Is that Meg Ryan or... No.
No, it was... it's lots of vignettes about the city. And they're making a New York I Love You right now.
Oh. Was this where they had stories on each, like, different neighborhood, 20 different neighborhood stories?
Yes.
Oh, I wanted to see that.
Yeah, it's really good. I totally recommend it. It is such a well-made film. And then they want to make one about New York. And I was thinking, wow, well, you were reading that. Well, what about one about San Francisco? What would that one look like?
So what was it that you enjoyed so much about the film?
Well, first of all, because I can't go to Paris, I haven't been there in a long time. I think it's a really beautiful place.
Yeah.
And it gave me a feel for the city. It gave me a feel for how big the city, much bigger the city has become. And it also, it had very poignant scenes about an Arabic girl going to the mosque, and boys making fun of her. Lots of timely stuff, and especially since stuff is happening in the Gaza, and that people are having a really hard time there. I just wanted to throw that in because I didn't bring it up last week, and I felt remiss because that's when it was more prominently in the news, not in the American news. But anyway, I think San Francisco has its own unique, its own unique districts, its own people live certain ways that other people, it would be good to show San Francisco underground a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think also when you look at the culture of cities that are very urban, it's a culture that tends to be very. There's a certain vibrancy, a certain synergy you get when you have many people living in close proximity, in high density.
Yeah.
And it produces a certain chemistry, social chemistry, that doesn't exist like in sprawl, for example.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes the film like the one on Paris very exciting. Actually, Paris, I read somewhere that Paris was, in terms of living density, that Paris was like several times more dense than New York than Manhattan as far as the living. People living per square miles.
Yeah, but what's weird is that you don't feel it as much there because it's not as polluted.
Really?
Yeah, because New York is pretty polluted, so there isn't a lot of air to share.
Interesting.
That's the end.
That's interesting.